Longish series of videos inspired by the lovely Hannah Hart, who could not be here today because she lives on the other side of the state and I didn't ask her. Anyway, I had it in my head that I would use her book and do a series a la Julie and Julia because she's fun, she's funny, she's inspirational, and I just wanted to. So I will be taking some of her recipes in her book and putting my own little twists on them, adjustments, whatever, to fit my style of cooking, and I hope you will all enjoy it. The first recipe in her book, free plug for you there, is the Hartwich, which is basically a giant meatball hamburger thing wrapped in lettuce and eaten with your face. A little difficult to eat, so I thought I would change it up a little bit to be a meatball lettuce wrap. And to stick with the lettuce wrap theme, I'm going to do some little Asian twists to hopefully be delicious and easier to eat. But first, I did a lot of research on the internet and with real professional people to find out what sort of wine would go well with an Asian style dish. So I'm going to use my favorite type of wine, screw top. Well, actually a Riesling, because it's sweet, which goes well with a sweet and spicy Asian style sauce. And this was a good recommendation from someone. Because it wouldn't be fair to not share with the cameraman, first one's for him.
Yay.
And for the chef. So to start, I'm going to make my Asian style barbecue-y sauce, and so I can get on the stove and start simmering and make all the flavors marry together. I'm going to start with hoisin, which is a Asian style sauce. That seems about right. I'm going to use rice vinegar for some tanginess. Fish sauce, which is over here.
You put that in? Oh, no, I didn't.
For salt. Another distinct Asian style flavor. Gotta have some heat, so I'm gonna use some sriracha.
Fake sriracha.
Fake sriracha, whatever. I've minced up some shallot, ginger, and the zest of a lime. That'll all go in there. I minced up, garlic. This is the shallot. I'm going to use the juice of that lime, or half of it at least. Use the other half in another place, don't want to waste it. And some honey. Just whisk that all together. I'm also going to add a good amount of some Chinese five spice, which is a nice thing to use in any sort of Asian dish. It's a combination of 5 spices. Imagine that. Some have more than that, but they're all along the same basic idea. So, now to make the sauce. I have about 1/3 cup of sugar. I'm going to put that in a dry pan and start off this sauce by making a caramel. So I'm just going to heat the sugar in a dry pan, stirring it around slightly until it starts to bubble up and get dark and saucy. It'll just melt itself down and be lovely, and that'll take a few minutes. So that'll start to happen, and once it's all melted together, we're going to add the rest of the sauce ingredients in here, and then let it simmer. Don't worry if it bubbles, that's fine. It'll all smooth out and be nice and tasty eventually. Just going to add this in here. Don't worry if there's a big gooey mass of sugar. Just keep the heat on low and it'll eventually melt. So, while that bubbles away on the stove and gets nice and thick and delicious, we're going to make our meatballs. So, Keeping true to our inspiration, we're using ground turkey. I'm just throwing that in the pan here. And then I have a little knob of ginger that I'm just going to grate on my microplane. I'm going to get a sharper microplane. You don't need 5 microplanes in your house to do this. You could just mince it up with a knife. Ah.
Still on.
I know I'm still on.
Tell us a story or something.
The story is in the food, I guess. I don't know. I'm bad at stories. You can pare that down. Pears. There are no pears in this food. I'm sorry. Sorry to disappoint. You could also grate your garlic on here. I'm going to put some garlic in it. But I'm going to do a neat little trick. And you crush the garlic a little bit. Then you just slice it a couple times. Then you pour some salt on it. And you can just crush it with the back of your knife until it makes a nice little paste.
What are you using that Lay's
And it makes your entire cutting board smell like garlic. Just throw that in. Last little bit of ginger that didn't quite get grated in. Apparently that works with ginger too. Good to know. I'm going to put some of the sriracha in here too, just to mirror some of the flavors, not too much. For those people who don't like it spicy, for those people who like it spicy, they can put extra on top of their little roll. Easy enough. Some salt, some of that Chinese spice. And then some binding agents, which are freshly ground up breadcrumbs. You could use seasoned ones if you like a different style of meatball, or just use plain ones since I'm adding the seasonings myself. Either way. And 1 egg. And just mix that all up with your hand. Now you've got a gooey mess. You can get yourself a plate and form all your meatballs ahead of time so you're not worrying about different cooking times as if you form and drop in your pan. Just try to make a fairly consistently sized meatball. You can always use a cookie scoop if you want, or just a measuring cup or something small that will make your things the same size. But just form little balls until you run out of mixture. So, now that we have a plate of fairly consistently sized and shaped balls, it's time to cook them. As I was researching some recipes, it said unless you have a massive cast iron pan, then you would have to do these in 2 batches. But I have a massive pan. I need you to pan to the pan! Pan to the pan. Massive pan! Which you probably saw a minute ago because you saw me making the sauce. Whatever. So, Sticking with the Asian theme, I'm going to use some toasted sesame oil to fry these up. Just a couple tablespoons on the bottom because it's a big pan, lots of meatballs, and hopefully I can get this to make a nice coat. It's very nice having a stove that is level because there's oil on the entire pan instead of just a puddle over on one side, which I was dealing with until a couple days ago. Probably shouldn't crowd the pan this much, but I'm lazy and doing it one go. So whatever. Just make sure they cook all the way around. So I'm just going to let them sear on one side for a few minutes, then give them a flip and do the same thing to the other side. So now that you've got a good brown on most of the sides at least, I'm going to get a little bit of the sauce. What are you doing? Mark is hungry, he's eating already. Gonna get a little bit of the sauce that's over here on low and just drizzle it over so we can get some of that flavor into the meat. Drizzle a little bit on everything and then roll it around. Occurs to me after this end is already dirty that there's a scoopy end on the other side.
Then you just pour it.
Because I want to use some. I'm reserving some to pour on at the end when I serve. Toss these around in the sauce. They should hold together pretty well now that they're brown. And these should be pretty much done. So I'm going to apologize to Hannah right now since there's no cheese in this recipe because it's kind of an Asian style dish, but this is for you. So, here's how I'm going to assemble it. I have a daikon radish here, and I'm just going to julienne it, or cut it into thin strips, so it'll be nice and easy to eat. So I just cut it a few times lengthwise, and then run the knife through, and you've got these nice, lovely strips of daikon. Got a bunch I did earlier, and I did the same thing to some carrots. And I've just got a nice rib of romaine. I'm going to put a couple of meatballs right on there. And I top that with some of my julienne carrots and daikon. Gonna get a little bit more of my sauce, which is nice and thick. And then some freshly chopped cilantro and a squeeze of that lime that we saved from earlier. Oh, take a bite. And that's good. See, the turkey is cooked through. It's important because it's poultry. You don't want to get any salmonella. Sauce has good flavor from the vinegar and the honey and the 5-spice. So it's a good Asian bite. And still messy, but probably a little bit easier to eat than the inspiration recipe, which was just a giant ball of meat. So while delicious, well, probably a little messier than this. So I had fun doing this. I hope you learned something, and I will see you next time.